This week on Forward, Zach and I get caught up on Abraham Lincoln, 2024, what lies ahead. How was high school different back in the 80s and 90s? Zach goes to the Masters, what we're watching right now, all of this week on Forward. And we are back. It's Andrew and Zach, the Zach and Andrew show.
It's been a bit, man.
Yes, even though Zach and I were literally roommates on the road the other day.
We've been spending time together.
I freaking showed up in Miami, and then Zach had to move over for me as I took over a bed in our luxury suite.
You took a red eye to, you went to Bitcoin conference in Miami. And you can't check in, no matter, we've learned.
If you arrive at 7 a.m. someplace.
Doesn't matter how VIP you are. They will not let you check into your room most of the time.
I felt so bad because obviously if I'm there napping, then Zach's like, and I'm out of here. I'm going to go find a coffee shop. So I felt like I was evicting you. I felt like a bad roommate.
I appreciate that, but I was fine, man. I was up early working. But I think we both enjoyed Bitcoin Miami.
Yeah, the Lobby 3 dinner was wonderful. The conference itself was fascinating. I got to meet the baddest man on the planet, Francis Ngannou, and I think you saw me geek out in a way that I meet famous people periodically, and I'm generally like, whatever. But this is the baddest man on the planet.
This is fun. Andrew Yang has fanboyed. There's 2 times I remember. I'm sure there might be one more, but it's not very often. You've met very famous people, and you're just pretty much
whatever,
ho-hum, shrug, right? But you fanboyed twice. One was, what's his name? Francis
Ngannou.
So I didn't know who this guy was. I just knew, but this man is he's a monster.
His arms the size of my head.
Yes. And like, he dwarfs you, and you're like 6'1", right? He dwarfed me too. I'm 6'4". This guy, big dude, and just like a tree trunk. He's
the baddest man on the planet.
Yes.
He's a UFC heavyweight champion, and he literally came out of the sand pits of Cameroon and then like snuck out of the country several times, was homeless in France, and then finds himself in an MMA gym, and they like looked at him and were like, we should probably try to train you. then he ascends very quickly through the ranks of professional fighting and becomes a champ.
He's super nice guy. Liked you, which was fun. But yeah, Andrew's fanboy and like kind of giggling like, oh my God, it's the greatest thing ever. Like, you don't really get to see that. And then it reminded me, the only other time I thought I had saw it was when we were at NPR and Edward Cullen was there.
Robert
Pattinson. But you didn't get to meet him, and that's my fault because we were trying to play it cool. We had an event going on. We walk out of the room, it was like, Robert Pattinson was in there. And you're like, oh my God, Robert Pattinson? Can I go say hello?
I think he might even have casted Batman at that point.
Yeah, he was just a teeny bopper sort of thing.
No. He'd established like indie cred. He did
the whatever the gangster movie was, or like there was it's like Running Out of Time or something.
It's called Good Time.
Thank you, our producer James.
Brothers.
Good Time. Very cool movie. And I think it was one of his first like post Harry Potter,
Robert
post Twilight.
Pattinson's an actor.
Really talented actor.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, I've raved about him in Batman, but it was fun to watch you fanboy, man.
Yeah. So yeah, Miami was a good time. Had a blast meeting a lot of people. Met Joe Jorgensen, who was a libertarian candidate for president.
Who else? Glenn Greenwald.
Yeah, I was on that
the
panel.
legend.
Was on that panel.
Apparently polarizing figure.
So we had a lot of fun, and now we're back. One thing I'm super excited about the day this comes out on Thursday, also coming out, is my Forward Unlocked book tour talk. It's just going to be free on YouTube. Up until this point, you had to make a donation to the Forward Party, and thank you to everyone who donated. Really, really grateful. But if you didn't donate, now you get it for free. And I can't wait for people to see it. You were there.
Yeah, I was there. It's I brought my girlfriend's parents.
Yeah,
Harley's parents showed up, and they like have watched your stuff, and her dad, who's like pretty critical guy, was like, that was phenomenal. He's just like mumbled, like, that was incredible. I'd never seen him live before. It was one of your better moments. Yeah, it's good. It's really good.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was maybe the 12th stop of the book tour, but Evelyn was there. You were there. A lot of friends and family were there because it's in New York. So super proud of it. Super excited about it.
It's informative too.
It's like 45 minutes that kind of encapsulates what we're trying to build here, some of the problems we're trying to solve, some fun stories from the trail. Yeah. So do check it out. I guarantee it's time well spent.
Where do you find it? Is it on your website, andrewyang.com?
If you go to andrewyang.com, there'll be a link there. If you just YouTube Andrew Yang, it'll pop up. But it's the Forward Tour Live, which you know what that means, Zach?
No.
I need to retire everything in that. It's like I'm a comedian who like the comedy special came out, and then I'm like, no old material, everything new. I'm going to show up and just have to have a completely different set of stories, different spiel.
That's true. It's tough being a comedian to stay relevant that way. You just keep. It's like an artist, except you don't get paid as much for the first hit album, you know?
Well, what's funny is I ran for president, and I had a pretty consistent riff and set of themes, which in some ways was the spoken word version of the War on Normal People.
Yep.
And you would tweak aspects of it, and I will say to our credit, like I would tailor it according to who I was talking to.
Yeah,
and
you did that for sanity purposes, if I recall, too.
Yeah, because I just want to say the same shit over and over again.
Yeah.
But then with the Forward book and the Forward Tour, it's similar, where I have like a stump, if you will. And so that this is the stump on YouTube, which means if I do show up to your living room now, I'll probably have to ask if people have seen it, and then I'll say something different. But this does make me kind of happy because one of the givens of a politician's job is that you say the same stuff over and over again. And if you're a leader in an organization, you actually have to say the same stuff over and over again quite often.
Yeah.
And you think, oh, I've said it once, you were there, so now I move on. But most of the time you have to hammer a point 5, 6, 7 times. Right. And I, for one, will say like I'd like to not just have to hammer the same things over and over again.
Yeah, you used to hate that. I used to have an old boss when I was on Wall Street. He's like, because he would go around the country. He was in charge of like I was in transformation management. He's like, "Or get these people to do what we want. We got to travel the country and just say the same thing over and over."
So that is a leadership and a management tip: is feel free to be redundant.
Yes.
Because redundance pays.
Yes. Generally.
Yes. It's just bad for your mental health.
Yeah, it's awful for mental health. Or just your work sanity, you know?
Yeah.
So we got a lot going on in the world, man.
Yeah. Well, one other
we got
fun thing from this week. So I interviewed John Avlon, who actually presented the Fair Vote Award to me this week, which was also a blast. And Fair Vote, if people don't know, it's an organization that is pushing for voting reforms, including ranked choice voting, my favorite thing in the world, that will help reasonable people.
They gave you an award for what?
It's called the American Democracy Award. It's very heavy. It's now on my bookshelf.
Nice.
For being someone who's been championing a better version of American democracy. But I interviewed John Avlon of CNN about his book, Lincoln and the Fight for Peace. And we were having a laugh about this. I sent a tweet that had 2 lines in it. It was,
oh man,
it was Lincoln won a 4-person race in 1860 with 39.8% of the vote. And in 1864, he named Andrew Johnson, a Democrat, as his running mate.
And you called it the brand new Republican ticket in 1860.
Yeah, which is accurate. It was
4-way race.
Yeah, the Republican Party was formed, essentially immediately beforehand, maybe like a few years beforehand, 5 years beforehand.
And I have not seen Twitter, blue check Twitter in particular, freak out to 2 statements of facts the way that they have.
It was a pretty short tweet. It was short and sweet, if you will.
You have a take and then people get mad, or you say something and people get upset, or that's usually what it is, right? Or a journalist says something about you and then, right. But this case, you were just saying a fact. I mean, shit, dude. John Legend replied.
Well, John's a good dude and wasn't a jerk about it.
He wasn't a jerk about it, but like, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of people with check marks replying and retweeting, quote tweeting. So why'd they, explain this to me, frankly.
Well,
why'd they get all pissy?
I think it's because somehow they thought it was like vouching for Andrew Johnson, the president, which it obviously, is
Clearly
not.
wasn't.
It's
a bit of a leap.
It is a bit of a leap.
leap.
It was just two facts being like, look, we had a unity ticket. We had a third-party candidate who won with 39.8% of the vote.
Yeah.
Which I thought were interesting facts, and frankly, were either new to me or I'd forgotten them.
Yeah.
Maybe I'd
That was
learned
new to
them a million years ago.
Many were like, read a book, and you're tweeting this as you're reading said book, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, reading.
and the book goes into the immediate aftermath. To me, it does heighten the tragedy of Lincoln's assassination because Lincoln would have led Reconstruction in a very different way, in a much better way than Johnson did. I think to the extent that there is an issue around it, it is the fact that people are so divided that if you even suggest something like a unity ticket, there'll be people that dislike that idea in various ways. And what I said thereafter was like, look, Andrew Johnson, bad president. Doesn't mean unity ticket, bad idea. It might have been a good idea. And in Lincoln's defense, too, he didn't have that many anti-secession Democrats to choose from at this point. I think it might have been a choice of one. I think Andrew Johnson might have been the only Democrat who wasn't pro-secession. And so Lincoln was like, hey, let's do this. And if you look at Andrew Johnson's behavior at that time, it actually reminds you a bit of Trump, where he's like very, very, obsessed with grievances and self-indulgent and shows up to speeches drunk, which I'm not sure if that's a Trump thing, but it was apparently an Andrew Johnson thing. Yeah, so there are all of these things baked into the book, and it's like a fascinating narrative. But the overarching narrative is of Lincoln as this unifying figure who tried to transcend politics at the time. He had critics continuously lambasting him, and he was like, we do the same thing in their position. He had very, very clear resolve on wanting to end slavery and wanting to keep the country whole. But aside from that, it was like, look, if if you disagree with me, we're still friends. I still love you. And there were some people at the time who bashed Lincoln for that approach, being like, no, let's but there were folks in the South too, when Lincoln was assassinated, who mourned and said the South just lost their best friend.
Do you, in reading the book, talking to John, and now seeing the Twitter reaction, are you seeing, how similar of a time of political environment is it now compared to what Lincoln was dealing with? I mean, obviously social media is different, but in terms of just our
honest Abe on Twitter, crafting his backwoods wisdom. No, I think that we're due for a reorientation politically. The parties just feel so desiccated and hollow, and the Republican Party got taken over by Trump, and there are a lot of Republicans who don't recognize the party today and are just like, this is not what I subscribe to or signed up for. Democratic Party has a different set of issues. There hasn't been like a demagogue takeover, but you do have to look up and say the Democratic Party has a really, really, let's say, uphill climb for this fall in November. And if Republicans take the House and possibly the Senate as is projected, one thing also that's underrated is that in 2024, the field is very, very negative for Democrats in terms of the nature of the seats that are up for re-election. So the odds of the Democrats holding the Senate through either 2022 or 2024 are really, really long or low.
Interesting.
So that's like it's going to be a tough time and environment in large part because of inflation, which we're going to talk about.
Right.
So if you look at that as the backdrop, you're going to see, I think, a real opening for some kind of political realignment, because there are a ton of moderate Republicans who I think will be looking for a home. There are going to be some Democrats who look up and say, wait a minute, whatever we're doing right now is not working so well because we're losing in various ways. And I think there'll be a ton of energy looking to coalesce around something that could resemble a unity ticket or a third party movement.
I was hanging out with one of my good political consultant friends. I don't have a lot of those, but there are a few I really like. And always fun to do that because you get what's the DC bubble establishment takes on certain things. So a couple and also he's got new data, like doing focus groups all the time and that sort of stuff. And he said focus groups are saying that your swing voters is what usually who they poll. They're not polling the base that often or doing focus groups with the base that often. They're saying these swing voters don't hate Joe Biden, but they don't think things are great. They don't think he's necessarily doing the best job or that we're all thriving, you know? And I think you can, I mean, those, if you're paying close enough attention, and this is not obvious to like probably the average voter or casual voter, is that Biden has kept us out of war, at least us, and call it high end escalation of what's going on in Ukraine. But voters are kind of blaming him for that, right? Like, and all the things that come with it. Let's call it
Well, I think if
like
any voter looks up and they just look at the price at the pump every freaking
feels awful.
day or week and just like, or price at the grocery store.
Yep. So we hit today. Today we're recording this on Tuesday before our Thursday episode, generally as usual. Inflation hit a 40-year high, 4-decade high. The White House is in their, let's call it spin zones, what their job is, but saying that this is largely due to Russia and the Russian-Ukraine situation. Inflation was really high before this war, so I think that is a spin zone situation. So question for you. We've talked about inflation a bit, but
what else did the swing voter say in the focus group?
Well, the other one that he was saying was more than he never noticed before was usually, he's like, it's tough to always put people in boxes, right? But he said now more than ever, you're finding people with just like a smorgasbord of opinions that you wouldn't be able to capture in one bucket or the other, right? Where people are like super anti-immigration, but also something that's more lefty on the other. Like they're more, and also defund the police. Like you're seeing like this kind of more of a melting pot of views to the point where it's tough to bucket them as left or right. And it also depends a lot on geography, right? So some of this is like relatively typical and some of it's new. So how these parties work is like you figure out a lot of what you do in focus groups, figure out who from the party can help you win, right? So if we put Biden in an ad saying your name and saying pictures with you and him, or is that helpful or not? And who would be helpful? If I put my Democrat on Fox News, is that helpful or not? Like things like that they pull. And obviously it depends on the state. But Biden there's not as much hateful rhetoric as there is towards like a Trump or so, but no one is, it's not great for him right now. It's like, this is, maybe people could.
So do candidates benefit from having Joe in an ad for them?
Depends on the candidate, but it depends where they are, but not particularly, no.
I think it's going to be tough because, there's a limited toolkit around inflation and the Democrats are stuck messaging, trying to message it down, but the price of the pump don't lie, the price of the grocery store don't lie. And so you're like, look guys, they're going to punish the party in power in that situation
every time.
Every time. There's a massive enthusiasm gap between the parties right now. I don't know if you saw this. It's a 17-point gap where Democratic voters are just not that jazzed. That augurs very poorly for them.
But if Trump runs, they get excited. Is that?
Well, I mean, this is right now. So this is
without
going
Trump.
Into 22. 17-point gap is very, very high. It would suggest a very, very big swing of congressional seats, and you've seen some folks, frankly, taking that into account in their decision to either retire or not run. I mean, there's been an unusual number of retirements.
Oh boy. So I don't know. I don't know what your opinion is in this. Like, so I think these culture wars are awful right now because I think the right has a lot of on this end, like some of the moral high ground of like opening schools up or not having our kids wear masks or.
And COVID's going to be, it's
right.
COVID was a winning issue for Democrats up until, several months ago, and now is not a winning issue.
But then
the other massive issue for Democrats is going to be crime and public safety. And there's this terrible, terrible shooting in New York.
That just happened today.
So I will confess to you, I ran for mayor, and there are times when something terrible happens in New York, and I think, how would I respond to it?
Yeah.
Or is there anything that could have been?
What could a mayor have done?
Yeah, what could a mayor have done? And on this one, we don't have the facts as to the nature of the shooter. It hasn't been caught as of this recording. But it does strike me that, in most situations, if someone is, let's say, planning something heinous like this, it'd be very difficult to guarantee that this sort of thing doesn't happen if you're like competent in law enforcement. I mean, you just don't know.
Yeah. These things are always tough to prevent.
Yeah,
in a free
where
country.
and so that this is part of the mood that you just described the swing voters have, where they look up and they just don't feel very good. And so like that I saw an article by Derek Thompson in the Atlantic about why people are sad. And there are things a lot of people can relate to. It's like you're stressed out, you're isolated, you're more likely to be drinking.
Yeah.
And so you look up, and if that's the national mood, you're going to see more bad behavior. I think that will lend itself to crime rates, really, and we're seeing that too.
Yep. So then, when you're mayor, what can you do? You can give an impassioned speech about bringing everybody together, which nowadays will not work.
And then 3 days later, someone else is going to do something nasty, and then your speech seems.
So then you can ratchet up crime prevention up to stop and frisk type policies, which have pros and cons, and the cons are pretty shitty.
We'll see what kind of decisions he makes, but there's part of me, it's like, wow, if I were in this boat, you end up making choices that or like whatever they are, they're going to have real trade-offs depending upon people's hunger for a sense of security. I think one ingredient in this is going to be the use of technology, where here in the States, we are averse to, frankly, having like tons of cameras everywhere and surveilling folks.
The UK has CCTV or whatever it's called.
Yeah, there are other countries that have gone more hog and on that. But I think that's going to be an issue that pops up more and more here.
Yeah, what do you think on that? It's just the freedom and safety argument, right? It just tells all the time in some ways.
Well, one of the things I was talking to an author about is that I think that here in the U.S., our data is getting packaged and sold and resold by private companies all the time, and we trust those companies more than we trust our government.
Right.
It's like if you say, hey, the city or the state are surveilling you, you'd be like, oh, fuck no,
right.
That's the worst. And then it's like, hey, Facebook and Amazon and Google have all your data. Be like, yeah, that's cool.
Well, it's a rational trade-off. It's like, okay, Google and Facebook, they're going to make money off it. Yeah, but then I get free Google Maps and I get, a bunch
even
of
though, by the way,
that
there's some really negative effects of these companies.
Oh, it's pretty terrible. Yeah. But you don't feel it as often. But the government feels like they can arrest you for shit. And find you.
And I think generally your trust level is lower. Which you're seeing these stories of corruption come out. I don't know if you saw Lieutenant Governor got arrested.
Brian
Benjamin
got arrested. Just got nominated. I just got picked by our governor. Yeah. Campaign finance issues, right?
Yeah, they seem pretty serious.
Yeah,
it did not seem like
campaign finance in New York, in particular. No joke. They'll put you in jail. It's not the first time they put somebody in jail for this.
So this is the rough thing, and this is part of it too, is that the mistrust is so high now, and then people keep proving themselves worthy of mistrust in a way, like one of the things around some kind of political reorientation or reorganization is that you look up and I would say that the Republican Party has had very, very significant corruption problems, and you can see that, Trump in various ways. The Democratic Party, are there corruption problems in the Democratic Party?
100%.
Oh yeah, sure, for sure.
Yeah.
And so then if you end up arguing against either of these, then there are a lot of people who are willing to listen. A lot of people are increasingly checked out. And the parties, I think, sense this, and so they're trying to hold more and more by pointing out, it's like, look, you think we're bad, like look at these other guys.
Right.
But this is going to wind up coming to a head in the 24 cycle in particular, and it's going to be a tough case because and sometimes I feel, because I'm like friends with a lot of people in these institutions, where they're looking up and there are these forces that are in some ways out of their control, where let's say inflation would be one, the one major one. Are there things they could do to ratchet down inflation? The main thing they could do to bring down inflation would be to raise interest rates in a significant way. And then that would have very, very negative effects on asset prices in the stock market. So it's a little bit of a pick your poison situation. Yeah. Now, there are so many parallels between this situation, Joe Biden and Jimmy Carter in the late 70s with their version of stagflation, and the poison they picked was high interest rates and recession. Essentially, they had a guy named Paul Volcker just turn that dial way up. I don't think that we have it in us to turn that dial way up this time.
You predicted on the presidential when you first started running, and it's in More on Normal People, is that we're going to start, if this kind of divide in the country and anger in the country continues, you're going to start seeing us arrest or assassination attempts on our leaders. And more, when your term's up, you go to jail. Is this, the arresting a lieutenant governor in New York State, a beginning of that?
Oh no, it doesn't seem that one. I mean, they're all Democrats here in New York.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I mean
that's not a partisan one. That's actual.
That's not partisan retaliation.
Okay. But do you think that's something we start seeing?
It's a dynamic I wanted to avoid. But we probably start trending in that direction.
Biden will probably not run if Trump doesn't run, but if Trump runs, he probably feels the need to run as one of the few that can beat him.
Yeah, that's one thing I've heard too, is that Joe feels he's the only one who can defeat Trump. So if Trump runs again, then Joe runs again.
He's gonna run. Do we all just collectively bang our head against the wall if it's a Trump-Biden 2.0?
Well, one of the jokes I've been telling, which is in the forward book talk as well, is that their combined age in 2024 would be 159. Like Joe turns 82 in 2024 and Trump would be 77. So, I mean, look at that. So if you were to run a third party candidate who is under the age of 70, I think that they do well, because 50% of Americans don't want either Trump or Joe to run. I will say, if Joe does run again, at this point, you'd have to say his VP is going to be de facto president during the term, because the odds of him just having to step down in the middle of a second term would be so high. I mean, 82 to 86. And Joe's a non-medical marvel, I mean, like, he's not like he's like a normal dude. He's above average. Like, he's functioning at a much higher level than the average 79-year-old right now. If it's Kamala again, and this would be a tough thing because it'd be very difficult for Joe to be like, hey, it's not Kamala, because she's your sitting VP, historic candidate, woman of color. But if he runs with Kamala again, this time it'd be like, okay, we're essentially voting for Kamala.
And that won't particularly do great.
Because
Trump will address that. That's the thing. Certain politicians would not say that the quiet part out loud, but Trump will. Trump will say, like, this man's too old, losing his facilities. You're voting for Kamala Harris.
So this does rewind to does Trump run and does he win the Republican nomination? And what would be the timing of Joe's decision? Can Joe wait for the Republican process to play out before deciding to run again? Probably not. He probably has to make the call when Trump is declaring. In my opinion, Trump probably declares, if he's going to do this thing, sometime in 23. And then Joe has to make a decision around then to clear the field or not.
So when did Bloomberg declare? Late 2019, right? It's like November.
So it'd be 23.
Right before. He'd be doing late 2023. And he missed the ballots in Iowa and New Hampshire for sure, but I think it was a few early. I think it might have been Nevada as well. There's timing. If you wait too long, you just can't get on the ballot. I don't know if there are rules on sitting presidents for a presidential primary, if they're automatically on, if they have to get on again. I'm not sure.
Well, the blocking and tackling would be for every other candidate. Is every other candidate who's looking, it's like, hey, am I running? Is Joe running?
Yes, that's true. That's a good point.
And
everybody else has the blocking and tackling too.
Yeah. And then Joe would be like, hey, I'm running, and then no one runs against him except for, maybe a token
he's going to have to
candidate.
make a decision within the party. If I'm Jamie Harrison or whoever running the DNC, which doesn't have any particularly real power, offense to Jamie, but they make that decision after the midterms, right? You make that call in December 2022 or January 2023.
Yeah. I keep telling people to try and enjoy this year because, things get bad.
Last year
after
was
the midterms.
Year to enjoy, technically.
I suppose.
Not a down year, but it was COVID, so tough to enjoy.
So 22 is the year for enjoyment, everyone, because
God.
23, it ticks forward to this stuff again.
Okay, let's talk about something more fun.
The Masters.
All right. I went to the Masters.
Congratulations, man.
Thank you. Very cool experience.
So those of you who don't know, Zach is it accurate to call you an avid golfer?
No, I'm awful at golf.
But can you be avid and awful?
You can be avid. I like it. It is fun. It's a very hard sport, and a little pretentious on the high end. But like I like public course golf. I think it's pretty fun. Go and be outside. Sometimes drink some beers with friends, whack some balls around. So I went to the Masters is in Augusta, Georgia, and it's like, if you've ever seen them putting on the green jacket at the end, that's the Masters, and it's this escape.
Wait, was
of
Tiger
a golf
there?
Course. Tiger was there. So
Did you see Tiger?
I watched Tiger Woods play, man.
Did you go up and high five him?
No, I did not. They weren't really. You're not allowed to touch them. So the Masters has very, very strict rules. No cell phones on the course. They have limited number of tickets every year, and everyone wants one. So if you are messing around or not doing what they want, they just boot you, and you never can come back, and they care less. But it's crazy. The merchandise store, I'd say, was like a waspy Black Friday, if you will, in terms of like the amount of.
So does this mean that like, because this is so select, this is just something dumb, but like, did you, aside from all the pro golfers that you recognize, were there like a bunch of other luminaries there? Because
there are a number of celebrities just walking around the place because it's a tough ticket to get. It's like NFL players run around, or
a lot of NBA players are big golfers too, so they're probably there. So who'd you see? It'd be fun.
Who did I see?
It's funny, man. You had a celebrity.
I did not see. I actually did not. I saw. What did I see? I saw a couple announcers. I'm trying to remember their names. You know what it was? A lot of people like I recognize that guy, but I don't know their name. That's why. But it's.
Dude, I got such a high compliment the other day in the airport.
What'd you get?
Miami. Someone saw me.
And they thought you were.
They said, "Hey, that guy's a TV star." Is what they said.
There you go. You're a TV star.
And then
you
I was
were
like,
for a little bit.
Oh, you know what? And then actually, someone called me Daniel Day Kim, which I took as a compliment.
Mr. Kim, nice to see you.
Because Daniel's a really nice guy, and you know, in my view, very handsome.
But it's like, so I never.
So
actually
you saw a lot of people be like, "Oh, I know who that person is."
Yes,
but
and I mean, I saw on Twitter afterwards a few, like, I think Josh Allen was there for one day.
Oh, shit, man. You could have freaking run up and gave him
I don't know if he was there Sunday. But the other thing, I've never been to a pro golf event, and it's a fascinating experience. I mean, the Masters is huge, but there's also a big golf course. So everybody's just spread out. And basically, at the Masters and a couple other places, you, like, plant your stuff. It's so weird. You plant your chair, and you have to have a Masters chair. Or you can bring your own, but you have to fit a certain size. But usually just people buy the Masters chair. The merchandise there is like relatively cheap because they're just shelling out so much volume, and the place is doing fine in terms of revenue. But you put your business card in your chair, and then no one touches it. It's just like an accepted rule, like you don't steal people's stuff, which is nice. You either mark a spot and then go follow around a player and then come back to your spot, or you go post up at a hole. So we posted up at 15 or 16, basically the front of the 16th hole. So there's a par 5, which is like a longer hole in golf. So you can see them putting, frankly, for like what's called an eagle. This is 2 under par, what you're supposed to do for those who don't follow golf, or putting for birdie. It was a hard, like right over water. And then it's a short par 3. So on Sunday, a lot of them are going for the hole in one because many of them are out of contention. No one got a hole in one. But anyway, it's crazy to watch golfers. Like, these greens are very challenging. So you're watching golfers struggle like I struggle. But you know, their course is much harder. It was awesome, man. It really was. And then like beers are $5, sandwiches are $2, $3. It's crazy how cheap it is. Then they do that intentionally. So I had a pimento cheese sandwich.
So when you get a last minute call saying like, "Hey, can you come to the Masters last minute?" Were you like, "This is the greatest thing"?
I'm
of all
like
time?
dropping everything and go, yeah, like bucket list. Yeah. It's tough to get the Masters. Yeah.
So everyone knows that's the thing. It's like there's a tough ticket.
If you can get, it's pretty tough. You can get. My brother does the lottery every year, and you can get like tickets to the practice rounds, like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. But to get Thursday through Sunday, where they're actually competing, and this year in particular, because Tiger. I don't know, like, so Tiger Woods, his most recent situation 17 months ago, gets in a car crash, shatters his leg. They're not sure he's going to walk again. And then 17 months later, maybe it was like 15 months later, he's showing videos on Instagram that he's golfing. And then 17 months later, he's like, "I'm competing in the Masters." And we're like, what? And then the first round, he was like tied in 10th. He was even -1. He was like in contention. And then he kind of fell off as it went because it was, I could see him limp.
Yeah, it's hard.
So I don't think he's not, obviously not the same right now, but the vibe is a shorter course. So they're saying if Tiger does break the record for the most major championships, he'll have to do it. I think he needs 4 more. Don't quote me on that. But he'll probably Like the way he'll do is probably through the Masters. You got to win a couple.
So
of
now
those.
that you had this experience, are you like, hey, I got to go to more pro golf tournaments?
I don't know.
Or is it that
Probably.
or is it you already went to the best one and now you're like,
That's
it'd be
like the best
if you go
one.
if you go to
But
the
there
Super
is
Bowl and you're
one
like, I'm not gonna
that's
go to
like
this.
so I've thought about that. There's one that's like kind of a party course in Scottsdale. I think it's called the Waste Management course, and there's like a U stadium around a par 3 where like just a short hole where people try and hole in one, and it's like chaos. Like people are just screaming, like there's no noise rules and stuff like that. So that looked kind of fun, but I can't say I'm a big golf guy. I just like it.
I've never been to a pro golf event.
Yeah, that was my first one, which is a bit of a high bar at this point. The Masters on Sunday is kind of
Yeah, well done, man. You went
Anyway.
straight to the top.
I wore my golf socks today, team. I imagine some people just don't care about this, but the Masters are cool. If you ever get the chance to go to the Masters, or you can enter the lottery, they do let people, a portion of the public. So it's like people like who's members, who's in Augusta. It's like, or who's in like, members of this course. It's like people from Augusta and have been there for generations. And then, the people who kind of run the world, like CEO of Exxon or God knows what. It's that kind of pretentiousness, if you will. But it is beautiful.
Have you been to the U.S. Open here in New York? The U.S.
Have you gone?
Oh, the U.S. Tennis Open?
Yeah, it's cool here. But it's like these sports. This is what
That's like the classiest sporting thing I've ever been to, and I feel like a golf tournament would be, a couple of notches
So
up.
this is what I'll say. I'm a tall white guy, and there's certain sports. It's tennis, golf. I guess you could throw in like the squashes and your other, but they're like old white people sports objectively. And on one hand, they're old, like classic sports, so they're usually kind of fun to watch, and there's a beauty to them and art to them. And there's another element that's like feels kind of douchey,
So my parents,
I feel a little guilty, honestly.
God bless my parents, but there was a moment where my mom was like, hey, you should learn how to play golf because it'll be really good for you professionally.
Yeah.
And I was like, Mom, I have zero interest in golf. And so then I went to a course a couple of times at corporate events and, would take some hacks and like I sucked and like I never played anything. But at that point in my 20s, I was like, I play basketball on weekends on the courts. Like, I like that. This is my jam. And like maybe when the wheels fall off, I'll like do something else.
Yeah.
And to the extent that there's like a sport for the aging weekend warrior, like for me, it is tennis. But, I appreciate the fact my parents tried that because my mom was always about me trying to, do anything that would help me succeed.
Golf.
Thank you, Mom. I appreciate you, even though I ignored you on this one. I also ignored my mom when she was like, hey, stay a lawyer. I ignored my mom when she was like, hey, don't run for president. Yeah. I ignored my mom when it was like, hey, starting these businesses might not be the best idea. Love you, Mom.
Thanks,
Mom. But yeah, Mom.
I've been doing the opposite of what
I've been doing the opposite. I'll tell you another mom story, Mom Yang. So I had an ear piercing for 5 years between the ages of like 15 and 20. And then when I took it out.
Did I know this? Yeah, there's a photo of you. Yeah.
There's a photo of me with like a gold hoop earring.
Yeah.
And so
Which year?
Left.
Left.
There's still a bit of a hole. So when I took it out, my mom was like, thank God you got rid of that. And then I was like, I didn't even know you didn't like it. And she was like, I hated it. But I knew if I told you I hated it, you'd probably keep it longer. And I was like, oh, my poor mom had to deal with that for 5 years.
Parents have to do that a whole bunch of times where it's like, I look back at photos of me and I'm like, Mom, why'd you let me do my hair like that or look like that? She's like, oh, if I got involved, you would have probably kept doing it. It's got to be a thing for dating too. Like, as particularly, like, oh my, the classic, like, dad doesn't like the daughter's boyfriend and lets her know, and then she dates him even longer.
Oh, this is the good old days, man. A little bit of adolescent rebellion. It's where it's at.
Yeah, I was a goody goody. I didn't do anything. Yeah. No, I think I snuck out like twice, and then like.
That's gonna be funny. It wasn't like some rebellious shit I did. I mean,
you were an actual rebel. Yeah, you actually. Oh, you dressed like one. You wore a trench coat.
Yes, I did, and I went to a lot of rock concerts. I was into like alternative, music scene. So I did go into mosh pits a lot. I did stage dive occasionally. I just like go into the mosh
How
pit.
old
I
were
was
you
really
doing this?
skinny. So I'd go in there and just like throw my
Just
body
get
around and get
bonked.
thrown around.
How
and just,
old are
like,
you? What is the age of your mosh pit phase?
Like 15 to 21.
In college too.
Yeah. So when I was
But
in
in high
college,
school.
in high school, I would
That's
go.
like
I went to
sophomore,
like the
freshman
first,
year.
second, and third Lollapaloozas.
Oh wow, yeah.
So then like the first Lollapalooza, if I remember right, it was like Living Color and Jane's Addiction, Nine Inch Nails, and so you'd go and there was like giant mud mosh pit and you'd just get in there.
crazy.
And, yeah, just go and at the time, it's like if you fell from 6 feet up, like it just didn't seem to matter. So so I remember that. I remember one time I was in like a mosh pit and someone's like combat boot like went into my face and I ended up with like a like bloody nose or some shit, but it wasn't that
And you
bad.
just kind of shrugged it off and kept going. Or did
Yeah,
you-
I was like, oh, that hurts. Then I look around and be like, oh, what happened? I got like a bit of a bloody
and you were fine.
nose or bloody lip. I was a bit of a jackass during that time myself because that was one of the joys of that period was that like you get hit and you could just like go and like shove someone back and then they'd be like like, it's just I was like that was just so was that rebellious? Sure.
More than me, man.
In college too, what happened was I showed up at college and then I would say to be like, hey, you want to go to this like rock concert in New York City? And so like some people would like visit me and then we'd come into the city and then see a show and then like do some of the stuff. Yeah, I guess that was me in my teenage years.
Damn, dude.
Did I get in any fight? I got in a lot of fights as a kid, but that was like juvenile stuff because I was like one of the only Asian kids. So like someone would call me chink or gook or something. I'd be like, all right, I guess I have to
Throw
fight
down.
you now, and then I would fight and generally lose.
No, I was not.
So I was very angry, and because of the anger, I would lift weights. There was a period. This was something. It was probably this is not cool, but I bought a butterfly knife in the city
Just to stay ready.
and then I brought it to school, and then like my friends were like, "Yo, man, you can't have that knife.
that shit in
You can't
school,
have
yeah.
that knife in school." And so like I hear about that like kids doing stupid shit, and I'm like, "Oh, I did stupid shit."
But it really wasn't until after Columbine where they got real strict across the country on like any type of contraband like that.
I mean, I have no idea what would have happened in my public school if they'd caught like 13-year-old me with a
I
butterfly
remember
knife.
very vividly like there was was that elementary school? What was Columbine? 99?
Yeah, I mean, I was in my mid-20s by
Yeah.
then.
I was younger. So it was they were real strict. It was like that was the time.
So here's what I would do. I would come into the city, and then I'd buy weapons. and then I'd go back, including my
We're not
favorite,
normalizing this. This is not okay behavior.
including throwing stars. And then
Like
I
ninja
would
stars?
like ninja stars, just huck them into trees and try and get them to like
Is
say
it
you
racist
put a
to
little
call
target.
ninja stars? I'm sorry.
I'm sure. And
I'm sure it is.
Yeah, no,
Fucking A.
throwing
Just-
stars
just
would be the thing.
cancel. I've been canceled
Just
a couple times.
just take
fucking do
and
it.
so we'd set up targets in these trees, and the throwing stars were not very sharp. So they wouldn't work very well, and you'd just be like
Just
hucking
like
them.
a dull metal object.
like throw them at targets we'd put up.
Okay.
I suppose like now it's true. This behavior doesn't sound very cool, but the
At least
other
you have a good story.
yeah, I
Yeah.
suppose. I don't know. Though I will say though, despite my rebelliousness and the music scene, I was around people who did a lot of drugs, and like I would just never touch it. I was very, very
Just like no go.
yeah.
But drink alcohol underage.
I think like one of the first times I drank, I was definitely underage, and then I was like, okay, enough of that. It was
Oh,
one
wow.
of those
Good
things
for you.
where, like I never became like a consistent drinker. I drank once, and then was like, well, that sucked, and then stopped.
Got it. Yeah, honestly, you had a more eventful childhood. I was a nerd. I was the oldest, but I was a nerd.
Well, it's
So-
tough, man. Looking at this now is because like I do feel like our culture now, even some of the things I just named, there was this like like adolescent stupidity. Now would be like very, very serious. Can't like like that kid.
That's true. Well, high school's so different now, man. It's so different. Like I grew up, and you definitely grew up in this, where it was like the remnants of the Breakfast Club were still very strong until let's call it, frankly, social like 2010, where there were your popular kids and your nerdy kids and your gothic kids and your XY like that. And now it's much more of a smorgasbord of participation trophy. Like everybody's like it's like feigned equality in some ways. I don't know enough about it, but there's a new movie with Rebel Wilson coming out on Netflix where she was in basically she was like cheerleader captain prom queen her junior year in 2002 goes into a coma, and then tries to go to high school 20 years later, and wakes up in 2022. And she's funny. I find her pretty funny. But like the concept is, or
The culture's totally changed. The high school culture's totally changed. And that was like we're the popular kids, and it's like everyone's popular. And,
yes, that's exactly what it is. And where are the cool kids stage? Like, we're all the cool kids. Like, okay. But yeah, dude, I did like musical theater and a cappella, and I did some sports too. So I was like kind of a mix. I was like a poor man Zac Efron, if you will. But
that's a funny way to characterize yourself.
Yeah,
man.
But he was cooler, I think.
I hung out
with the cheerleader. I did not.
I hung out with the goth kids in my school. They were actually some of the people that kind of led on the musical.
Some of the coolest kids I met were goth kids, like that, because they're usually more sure of themselves, at least at a young age.
I think this is something that it harkens back to like a consistent theme, I think, which is that when I was growing up, and so someone said something to me that I think is a very powerful and interesting message. It said it's going to be up to Gen X to fix big tech because Gen X remembers the time both before and after. So we're not digital natives where we came of age before this stuff was everywhere. We use it. But now we're like, okay, I can see the problems and the excesses. I think that people who are young and immersed in it, they don't remember a time before. And then the people that came before us, aren't really native users in the same way.
Yes.
And I thought that was really interesting. One of the things I realized gets me into trouble sometimes is that, it's like I grew up in an environment where, people talked a lot of trash. And you're just like, haha, and like whatever. And then now it's like if someone. So I was on an interview with this entrepreneur, which I appreciated. It was funny. But he said to me afterwards, he's like, Andrew, you're a shit talker. You should talk more shit. And then I heard this and I was like, he's right. I am a shit talker. But like I'm a shit talker because I came of age. When
shit talking was like
where everyone was a shit talker.
It was a sign of endearment.
Yeah,
like, fucked up. Like, kids do not understand this today, but unless you made fun of your friend for his weight, his race, his ethnicity, like I'm talking about your friends, not strangers.
Oh yeah. You just talk trash to each other all the time.
Yes. You weren't real friends. And that's fucked up, especially today. But my friend showed me, I got lunch with a buddy of mine, and I was in a fraternity in college, and he's like, there was a photo I was looking at, and all the comments would get everybody canceled because they're just like shitting on each other.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean what was said was okay, but it also means that it doesn't have the same evilness that it would today, knowing what is now widely accepted, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. It was like, part of it was that you, like, the intention was not to like hurt or damage or whatnot. It was like, in some ways it was actually like a sign of a relationship.
Yes, correct. And now it's different, obviously, but because we've had these moments, right? And that's tougher for younger generation to understand, for sure. Tougher for older generation to understand too, because it's beyond it.
And so there are elements of it where you look at it and say, okay, like, sure, like trying not to say things that are hurtful to people on certain levels. It's like, yeah, like what could be wrong with that? But I do think this is a point that Bill Maher made when I was on a show a couple of weeks ago. He was like, but then there's like actual harm of, like, if you start merging the two, then when there's like actual violence or harm, then you treat it in the same way you do like a misstatement or whatnot.
Yes.
And then like and so that there, you wind up in not a great place because there should be like a major distinction between.
There should be a major distinction between Chris Rock making a joke and Will Smith hitting him in the face. Those are two different things. And one is way worse. And if you don't know which one's way worse, I'm going to challenge you to understand that the physical violence is going to be worse. I'm not saying that Chris is in the right.
One of the tough things is like I have a growing sense that these distinctions are somewhat generational. Now, sometimes,
yes, for sure.
No, sometimes it's like, I run into a young person who sees things exactly the same way that you and I are discussing.
Yeah,
so it's not like everyone.
And then I hire immediately.
Be like, hey, let's work together.
Let's do that. let me ask you this. So I'm watching. I actually want to talk about shows before we wrap this thing, but I'm watching The Expanse right now, which I've also heard. I don't want to. I don't like when you're like the show's so amazing, the book's 20 times better. I heard the book is 20 times better, so I actually want to read the book. But watching The Expanse, which is a show that is now 7 or 8 seasons deep on Amazon. It got canceled after season 3 on Sci-Fi, and Jeff Bezos was like, "I like that show," and now it's
wow,
expanded.
that must be an interesting role to be
but
in. Being
there's
like,
a
I like
base-
that show. I'm going to bring it back.
Expanse is very good. And the concept is it's like 1,000 years in the future, and we've colonized Mars. Earth is doing its own thing, and then they've also basically they find frozen asteroids in the asteroid belt and bring the water both to Mars and Earth for various reasons. So the asteroid belt and there's the space station along. So there's the belt as its own like political entity, and then Mars and Earth. And Mars is like the future seekers, right? So they're badasses, and they're like the smart military. They have the best military in the universe that we know of, and because they're all there to grow and kick ass, and it's your risk takers, and it's pure like capitalism and like fight for Mars. There's like that shared purpose. And Earth is like bigger and stronger, but lazier, and like no one really has jobs on Earth anymore because everything's pretty much automated. They fight their political infighting all the time on Earth, and the question is, as I watch it, one of my opinions, like there's a shared good and shared vision that Mars has. They're trying to colonize it. It's not fully there, but they're trying to turn it into what Earth is. Have we lost, like, definitely, and we talked about this a bit on the pod, but like post World War II, we had a very clear, and obviously during the wars, we had very clear shared goals.
National purpose.
Yeah. I think we've lost that. And the question I have, is it making us soft? And because we're fighting over things that like, in the grand scheme of things, guys, does this really matter?
Well, this brings us back to the Lincoln-esque example, which is at that point, the country was being torn apart by the question of slavery.
Yeah.
And then so you ask yourself today, okay, it seems like we're more divided and polarized than ever. What is it that's dividing us? And then when you try and find that issue, it like doesn't come anywhere near like, the existence of slavery. I mean, you look up and you say like, what is it? Someone said to me that these things do run in cycles, that there's like a 70-year cycle. You have a couple of generations who come and go, and they haven't experienced something before. So I'm not sure if it's softness, maybe something around it's going to be one of those don't know what you've got till it's gone situations. I mean, I do think that we're teetering toward a version of that in 24.
I worry, I think social media has affected our brains. Like the number of friends I have or young people I know with crippling mental health issues where they need to be highly medicated or just can't function, whether it's relationships or a job. And I say that with empathy. I say that that's hard. And I think a lot of them it's not particularly, I mean, it's clearly not their fault, or it's nothing they're doing that the rest of us aren't doing. It's just we've now set us up where, like, I always joke, I feel like I've lived, I want to say this right, like 1 year of my lifetime, the number of inputs I've received is probably as many as my grandpa received in his entire lifetime. You know what I'm saying? Where like the amount of stimuli that hit you on a daily basis, I mean, it's massive. And there's studies on this. I wrote this about this in my book. But the brain's capacity to navigate those stimuli has not improved, like a little bit, but not enough, right?
Someone says we still got Stone Age brains.
Yeah,
relatively speaking.
Right. And we're getting better, but not the same speed as technology, not even close. And what that's doing to us, I don't know. But if you look at the numbers, it's clearly awful, right? And I don't know if if we had a global war that was touching the United States.
I don't know if you saw one of
trauma,
these facts around where if what happened to Ukraine happened here, like, would you stay and fight? I don't know if you saw this.
I'm curious. I imagine most would not, right?
Well, it ended up being very, very different along party lines. I think it was like 40% of
right
Democrats, 68% of Republicans said, yeah, I'd stay and fight. And then it was 40% of Dems.
I would stay and fight, which would probably I don't know. But I know a lot of people wouldn't. Carly would want me to run. I wonder, I'm sure that split across gender lines is different too.
Yeah, I'm not sure. That's true.
But yeah, the Boy Crisis talks about this a lot, where it's the the call to fighting is something that a lot of men identify with, or have been told to identify with.
You know, and it's one of the struggles of today, and you just named it, which is like, what is the national purpose? Like, what are we fighting? You know?
What are we fighting for? And that's the other, like, what is worth fighting for, that besides, you know, let's call it not Twitter fights, like what is worth fighting for? I mean, I would say some of the women's rights stuff I think is really, really, like, you can even ignore its impact on the individual, which we should not. But if you did, economically, it's worth fighting for, because in terms of its impact on our entire society. But and you say climate change, right? But I think, like, if you want, like, you can break down some of, like, the racial inequality or wealth inequality from an equal access standpoint. These things I think are really strong things to be fighting for. But some of the shit that we're getting in fights over, man, like,
Pretty marginal.
yeah. Like when we're, I don't know, man.
Well, the worst part in American life is when we have wars on abstractions. You know what I mean?
We got a lot of those.
Yeah, no. If you have a war on abstraction, then it's like, when did you win? You know,
Like Ted
you
Cruz freaking out about Big Bird getting vaccinated,
like
that kind of shit.
You know, I mean, you can, like, let's say the war on terror, war on drugs.
Oh yeah.
Like, how the heck are you gonna win that war? And then how do you know? It's like, did you win the war on terror? It's like you can justify just about anything.
You've seen the meme where it's like, I'd like to congratulate drugs for winning the war on drugs.
Yeah, with the war on drugs.
We did not win the war on drugs.
Yeah, you don't want to declare war on these abstractions. You know, it's like that. It's
well, you do from a PR standpoint if you're a politician.
Yeah, it's good. Makes it seem like you're fighting.
The Republicans have this.
Something.
They're creating this war on families right now, and there's some things that there are some truth to, and some things that are awful and completely overblown.
And this is one reason why, you know, in my mind, like, we're going to end up swinging in a Republican direction over this next number of months, is because we're at a point now, and I made this point in my book, is that, like, we're at a point now where, like, openness and generosity are going to be just a little bit harder to come by for people. Like, there's going to be more of, like, a circle the wagons, hunker down mentality, and so if you have a party that's making those appeals, I think that's going to, you know, it's going to find a willing audience.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you say, like, your family, your way of life's under threat. People look around and be like, oh yeah, like, you know, let me do something about that.
Yep. This is shit, man. Buckle up. And you'll get a front row seat for it here on Forward.
Yes.
Try to be objectives.
You know, so I will wrap us on something positive. This Fair Vote event I went to this week, so uplifting. It was like this pro-democracy, pro-ranked choice voting crew, really wonderful people. A lot of folks have been working on these issues for years, and I believe that they've been way ahead of the curve. Like, I think I might have caught up to some of them, and, like, now I'm trying to get other people on board too.
Right.
So do check out Fair Vote. Check out the Forward book tour talk on YouTube. It's now free and available. If you enjoyed that, then do, you know, share it with people. Like, I tried to be both fun and engaging and also informative. And let me know if I succeeded. Would love your feedback.
That's a good point. Last thing I'll say, Severance on Apple TV. Holy shit. Ben Stiller directed it. Dynamite. Watch it. I promise you, you will not regret this. Watch Severance.
I hear great things about Severance. I hear great things about The Expanse. And I hear great things about Everything Everywhere.
Oh, what's that?
It's a movie that came out that's about the multiverse, but not in a Marvel way.
Everything Everywhere. What's it on?
It's out in theaters. It's like
it's a movie.
Yeah.
All right. That's cool. I'm watching Afterlife with Ricky Gervais. It's a little sappy, but it's good. Ricky Gervais, I think, is hilarious. I think he's one of the best comedians on the planet.
I've been watching Winning Time on HBO.
Oh, is it good?
I really enjoyed it. I'm a basketball guy, so
yeah,
you know.
I've heard it's good.
Yeah, and I'm an Adam McKay guy too. So
yeah, he's good. But Will Ferrell, I guess, got in a fight with somebody over because he wasn't cast in that. I don't know if you know.
It was a really juicy role. I mean, I understand why you want that
it.
role. Like that, it's like that role's freaking fun. But you know, his friend got it. I mean, what are you gonna do?
No, anyway, what are you gonna do? Anyway, we love you guys. This time next week, I'm sure someone will be pissed off on Twitter about something we did. So until then, we love you all. See you next week.